I'm going to start y'all off with a question, a little pop quiz here. You see the people here on the photos. These are all famous names. I just want, anybody can shout it out. What do all these people have in common? They're all Mississippians, right? We're here in Mississippi. Every single promotional thing that our state puts out, all the commercials will talk about all the famous people that have come from Mississippi, and it's true that we probably produce more people, and especially creative people, whose names, even whose first names, like Oprah and Elvis, are known worldwide. I mean, that's a tremendous, it shows the potency of Mississippi. And so you guys are all right. Yeah, the answer is that they're all born in Mississippi. But there's a second part to that answer. And if you had seen the topic of my talk, it might have given you a hint about it. The second part is that none of them became famous while they were living in Mississippi. So all these Mississippi natives had to go somewhere else to become famous. Now, these are just the most famous, most prominent examples of what is actually a pervasive problem. And that is the fact that for generations, Mississippi's young people have left. More have left than have come to Mississippi. Many have been pulled out by opportunity that could be found elsewhere that couldn't be found in the state. Others have been pushed out because of oppression, because of lack of opportunity here, lack of advancement here. It's a problem that still exists, and still it's getting worse and worse, and I feel like the reason I want to highlight it in this forum particularly is that we all know it. Many of us individually know it, especially those who go to college in this state. You make the decision, do you stay or do you go? It's not something, though, that we talk about a lot in public policy debates, in our politics, and yet it is the issue that sort of undergirds every other issue in the state of Mississippi. So let me explain that. First, I'm going to sort of put a few numbers on this problem, just so we can get a sense of how big and how vast it is. Just in 1 year, 2015-2016, Mississippi lost about 7,500 more people than moved in. So this just over 12 months, 7,500 people. Population of the state of Mississippi is just shy of 3 million. If you sort of add a few more years to that, go back a few more years and look since 2010, you'll see that 7,500 number is not just a one-year phenomenon. It's happening, it's recurring. So Mississippi has a persistent outmigration problem. And so just from 2010, just from the time that, we had the iPhone 3 to now, Mississippi has lost 35,000 more people than it's gained. We also have some stats about lifetime. So this problem didn't start in 2015, it didn't start in 2010. It's been going on for almost 80 years now. And so we can actually look through census data and see how many people who are living in the United States of America today were actually born in the state of Mississippi. And then we can subtract out how many people today still live in the state of Mississippi. And you'll find that we've lost about 400,000 people. 400,000 more people were born in the state of Mississippi than currently live in the state of Mississippi. These are big numbers. I think it's helpful if we actually sort of put it in perspective by thinking about it as a city. Just taking that number, that 35,000 number since 2010, if that were a contiguous city, where would it stack up in terms of rankings in Mississippi? Mississippi's a small state, it's a rural state. We don't have a lot of big cities. You're sitting in the only city that's over 100,000. So if you take just the people that have left between 2010, 2016, put them all together, that would be the 9th largest city in the state of Mississippi. Gone. If you take the people that are living elsewhere over a lifetime, well, that's over double the population of the city of Jackson. In fact, that 400,000 number, that 396,000 number, is actually bigger than the 5 largest cities in Mississippi combined. And so we're basically talking about, a city, a massive city of Mississippians that are just living elsewhere. So the biggest city in Mississippi is not Jackson. It's actually the Mississippians that are living in Texas or living in Georgia. I think it's really useful if we think about it in those terms. Now, what makes this not just a problem, but actually, I think, a crisis, is that no other state, even nearby, that touches Mississippi is experiencing the same problem. Every single one of those states, in fact, every other state in the entire southeastern United States, is importing people. Mississippi is at the crossroads of the fastest growing, most attractive place to live in America right now. And yet, we're the exception. We are the outlier. So that in the same period that we lost 35,000 people, you'll see that Tennessee grew by nearly 150,000. But even states, Tennessee is sort of in third gear. Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, these states are in first gear. They're in sort of low gear, but they're still adding people year after year at the same time that Mississippi is losing it. So they may not be accelerating very fast, but we're in reverse. I think we need to not just think about ourselves as being kind of part of the Mid-South, but rather we are the outlier. Now, not everybody moves out in equal proportions. Like this is particularly acute among young people. And so why I think it's pertinent to talk about this on a college campus. So when we ask the question, like, who are leaving? Who are among that 35,000? What we know is that 90% are under the age of 35. 90% of the people that have left, and again, this is subtracting out the people that have moved in. So we are talking about just a deficit that we're running and giving to the rest of the country. We're giving our young people. This map here, some of you may have seen it. It sort of went around virally in the state a few months ago. But if you look at the millennial population, and millennials, everybody, that's kind of an ambiguous term yet, but they look at millennials and talk about them as people born between 1980 and 2000. And if you look at the millennial population in every state in the United States, none has lost more since 2010 than Mississippi. In fact, none even comes close. The next closest, we lost nearly 4%, 4 out of 100 millennials in just 6 years. And those are people that are not being replaced, people who are moving out and not being replaced. The next closest was New Mexico, which was about 2.8%. And then it was Illinois, that was about 2.3%. And beyond that, you can't actually find that many states that lost more millennials than they attracted. The United States as a whole is importing a lot of people from other countries, a lot of young people from other countries. Mississippi is not just the outlier in the region, but in many ways we're an outlier nationally. The second thing we know about this population that's leaving is that they're the people who get educations in the state of Mississippi. So Mississippi, we're 50th in so many different education metrics. It consumes so much of our work in the state. People who want to advance the state, we say, what's the number one thing we need to do? We need to educate our young people. When we do that successfully, the problem is often the road to opportunity is the road out of the state of Mississippi. And so for the kids that we're succeeding, and we are failing many, many kids in the state, but when we succeed, often what we're doing is just increasing the chances that they're going to take that education and move to another state. And so what this graph shows is that if you look at people who have not gotten a college degree, who have either some college or an associate's degree, all the way down to people who didn't complete high school, Mississippi's actually importing more than we are sending out of the state. So when we're talking about these big numbers, people who are going, we're talking about people who get bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees in the state of Mississippi. And you'll see that the more education, the more degrees you get in Mississippi, the higher the chances you'll leave. And many of these people that leave, they're taking their families with them. And so that's what creates such a big hole, 35,000. And that's something that's going to be passed down generation to generation. Now, where are they going? Mississippi has been exporting people really in earnest since the 40s, the Great Migration. We saw migration of black agricultural laborers from rural Mississippi and really all of the rural South moving to the industrial Midwest, Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit. And so that's what this graph shows. This came from the New York Times. They looked at census data going back a century. And you'll see what percentage of Mississippians stayed in the state. And it's actually been relatively flat. Maybe even we retain a few more now than we did 50 years ago. But you can really see that where people are going has changed, especially if you get to spend a little time with this data. Illinois, Michigan, the Midwest, that was the prime destination for the majority of the latter half of the 20th century. But now where people are going, Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Georgia, it's the South. So people aren't deciding between whether to stay in Mississippi or move 1,000 miles away. They're choosing whether to stay in Mississippi or move to a city within driving distance of Mississippi. And that's a much bigger and much different question, I think, when we're talking about solutions. Now, I'm going to refine that and follow up on that point that we know that they're not just moving to rural Georgia, rural Texas. We know that they're moving to Atlanta, to Houston, to Dallas. What this map shows is county by county migration numbers between 2000 and 2010. So the purple counties, and especially the deep purple counties, are the ones that are attracting a huge influx of people. And the orange counties are the ones that are sending them away. You'll see, and you can overlay this with a map of southern geography, but you'll see that really it's not spread evenly across the South. You know, these states that are attracting hundreds of thousands of people, it's being concentrated in metropolitan areas. And even in Mississippi, you'll see that the places that are growing are the more metropolitan. Now, let's sort of cap this with actually some real numbers about just how many people from Mississippi are living in these other states and where they're going. As I said, Texas is number one by far. We've sent 75,000 more people to Texas than Texas has sent to us. You'll see that Florida, Georgia are up there. In fact, the only two states that we've imported more people from than we've sent over a lifetime are Louisiana and Tennessee. Now, part of that, especially in Tennessee, is DeSoto County. We see a lot of suburbanization from Memphis. But I want to put a little asterisk on that data because I'll just confess, I consider myself a lifelong Mississippian. I love Mississippi. I want Mississippi to be my home forever. But in this data, I actually count as a Tennessean because I'm from Oxford, but my parents decided to deliver me at Baptist East Memorial Hospital in Memphis. And so, according to the U.S. Census, I was born in Tennessee, and therefore, 6 hours after birth, I migrated to Mississippi. And so, and I think probably many of you too, where do people in Mississippi, South Mississippi go to give birth if they're not coming to Jackson? It's New Orleans. We're importing people from Louisiana in these figures. North Mississippi, it's Memphis. We're importing people from Tennessee. So just to put a little asterisk on that data. Y'all have all heard the expression, thank God for Mississippi, right? You know, it means that, if it weren't for Mississippi, then maybe we'd be last. Southern states really should be thanking us. They should be earnestly thanking us because when we're sending people, especially young people who have gotten a college degree in Mississippi, they are contributing tax dollars, they are contributing their ideas, talent, they're starting businesses there. And so this is a chart of just how much money, how much of a check are we cutting to all of the other southeastern states every year. Now this comes from the IRS. You can actually look and see who filed taxes in one state in one year and filed another state in another year. And so I went and compiled that data and looked in the year 2015 at all the people that had moved out of the states between 2010 and 2015 and how much they earned in those new states and subtracted out how much people who moved to Mississippi earned in Mississippi. And what you find is that people who left Mississippi earned $1.4 billion This is in 1 year, $1.4 billion more outside the state of Mississippi than people who moved here earned in the state of Mississippi. Our entire state GDP is just over $100 billion, and it's not growing very fast. We are doing a lot of work. We're putting in a lot of effort into recruiting businesses here. We're trying to fill up a bucket while we're not actually plugging this massive hole, this $1.4 billion a year hole. And it's not going, necessarily to California and New York. It's going to our neighbors. Like, they really should be thanking us. Texas got a $500 million subsidy because of Mississippians moving there in 2015. Tennessee, Georgia, all these states are making hundreds of millions. Even Alabama got $150 million more from Mississippians than we got from them. So thank God for Mississippi. We really should make them pay us back for this. Now, these are big numbers. I sort of talk about this in aggregate. What I actually think is most potent about this issue is that we all have sort of personal stories, and that every person's decision about where they're going to live, like, that's one of the most sort of intimate, private choices that we can make. And so talking about it in these big sweeping terms is good for policy, but really I think we need to break it down to one number, and that's the $9,000. The $9,000 question is how I frame it. So what $9,000 represents is the average earnings that somebody in Mississippi who has a college degree will make in the state of Mississippi, less than what the average person who has a college degree will make nationally. So people in Mississippi, if you have a college degree and you stay in Mississippi, on average, you're taking about a $9,000 hit. That's a huge sacrifice. That's about 20% of the average income. Now, of course, it varies person to person, but what we need to ask ourselves, I think, one, is how can we close that gap? We need to sort of demand of policymakers, we need to demand of business leaders that Mississippians need to be earning on par, at least with the rest of the Southeast. And so $9,000 is our deficit compared to the national average. It's $7,500 less, though, than the Southeast. So Mississippi, you are paying a premium to be here. A lot of people cannot escape that mathematics, that sort of financial arithmetic, even if they want to stay in Mississippi. We gotta make it financially viable for them. But the second question is, what are the qualitative things? What is the quality of life? What is it that's worth to you in your life that will offset that $9,000 that you might give up? What meaning, what fulfillment can we offer people in Mississippi that will make up for the earnings hit that they might take? And I think that there are a lot of different answers for that, and I think that this forum is a good example of that. I certainly know in my life that what I do, I could never do in another state. That I've advanced my career by being in Mississippi because I have the freedom to do things. You have something to talk about a lot is that you can wear a lot of hats in Mississippi. You don't get put in a box in Mississippi. If you care, people care about families, people care about relationships here, people care about creativity. There are a lot of things. But I think as a state, we get kind of tied up in this conversation about, material deficits. How can we, if we give just enough tax incentives, maybe we can bring people here. I want to ask and leave you with this $9,000 question is, what are the qualitative things that might make that $9,000 hurt a little less to people? What is it that we can do to make Mississippi a place where people can live and be fulfilled and make more benefit? A lot of it is I think, the impact that you can have on those around you and in your community. These are the things that we need to talk about on a personal level, on an educational level, on a business level, and certainly on a political level. Thank you.